Hi everybody, it's Honest John. When the Republicans took over the state of Michigan, they passed an emergency manager law. And this enabled them to take over cities and towns if the governor decided that they were in bad enough shape. Now the whole state is an economic mess, so it wasn't very hard to find places to take over. Now when that happens, the elected officials lose all power. The emergency manager basically becomes king. He decides what steps will be taken to deal with the city's finances. What qualifications does this guy have? Well, basically none. The law is very vague. It requires 5 years of experience either in business or government, and then they receive 2 days of training from businesses that specialize in privatizing city assets, so that these training programs are run by people who will benefit from an emergency manager basically giving them some kind of business. So actually, the only thing that is required to be an emergency manager is solid political connections to the Republican Party. Now, this law was so unpopular that it was overturned by the people in the last elections, overwhelmingly. But the Republicans, instead of accepting the will of the people, passed another emergency manager law, slipping it into the state budget so that it could not be overturned by the people. Now, if the law was helpful to the municipalities it's applied to, if it was supposed to help them, it has to be considered an abject failure. Only one municipality, Three Oaks, which has a population of 1,600 and actually is a fairly affluent area. That's the only town that has been taken over by an emergency manager and has actually benefited from it. Or I don't know if it's benefited from it, but it's the only one that is solvent. Every other city, town, or school district that has been taken over by an emergency manager has not improved. In some cases, they're worse off than they were. One of the reasons for this is because the emergency manager can outsource and sell off city and town assets, and that leaves the towns with fewer assets to recover, to use in some kind of financial recovery. People who do benefit from the emergency manager are the fat cats, because these assets that the cities and towns own are sold off at well below market value. And the emergency manager program has been one ongoing, continuous scandal. One example, the emergency manager of Pontiac, who sold the Pontiac Silverdome to a fat cat, now works for the guy that he sold the stadium to. And he sold it, and the guy got a great bargain. Right? The Pontiac Stadium was sold at far below market value. Here are some other things that the emergency managers have done. Emergency manager Michael Stanfield was recently ordered by a court to repay $250,000 he paid himself while running Pontiac. Arthur Blackwell, who managed Highland Park, outsourced the city's wastewater treatment to United Water, which is under indictment by the federal government for 26 counts of violating the Clean Air Act. He was replaced when it was learned that he was secretly taking unauthorized payments. In Muskegon Heights, the school district was taken over by an emergency manager who hired teachers who were found to be uncertified and unqualified to teach. In Highland Park, the former emergency manager is facing trial for embezzling municipal funds. I have no doubt that in the next election, Rick Snyder is going to be tossed out on his ass. And when that happens, I hope the first thing the governor does is start investigating this whole emergency manager fiasco. But by then, the damage will be done. Detroit is the next target for Governor Snyder. And it has a lot of stuff that can be sold to the fat cats, bankrupting the city. And it's going to take years for the cities that have been under emergency management to recover from the fraud that was perpetrated on them. See, I have no doubt that Rick Snyder will wind up in jail. And so will a whole lot of his emergency managers. But that won't happen until he's gone and honest people are placed in power. Michigan should be an example to the rest of the country of the anti-democratic leanings of conservatives and the disastrous results of giving them power. Thanks for listening.